Mr. Natarajan, my question really is that it looks like the worst fears of IT companies are coming true, but is this worse than you had expected? This is not just the H-1B bill being tweaked, this is also about doubling the visa holders' minimum wages to about $130,000 now.
It is going to be, obviously, it will disturb the competitiveness of anybody who is depending on the visa program. But you must also understand that the model of the IT industry is also changing. So the dependence on H-1B visas is not as high as it used to be in the past. But certainly people who are very visa dependent, it will be a setback because obviously if it happens that the minimum wage is doubled, clearly it affects the competitiveness of the industry vis-a-vis competition.
So why do you believe IT counters are reacting so negatively? Because this is obviously going to have an impact on margins. Any on-site hiring is going to be far costlier than an offshore job that could have been done with this, or an Indian who was traveling on an H-1B visa there.
So you must understand that this does not impact people working offshore. So what it really impacts is people who are on-site and are on long-term H-1B visas. So I think, the industry will have to look at how much of local hiring we can do, which is really required, maybe getting people at 75, 80,000 who are US citizens to do those tasks. Now, clearly there is a skills issue here, so one has to worry about skilling America. But I think if you have skilled people there who are of local origin, and then of course you have an offshore base, which is doing our research and other work in India, the model is still sustainable. But it is, if this goes through and the minimum wage does become $130,000, yes, it will force a rethink of the entire business model.
And what do you mean by a rethink? What could that rethink be? Because on-site hiring is going to be tough because America isn't as skilled as perhaps IT companies would want it to be. Margins are going to be under pressure as well. So what would you mean by a review of the model? What sort of a review will be warranted?
See, let me make it simple. I'm saying that if you look at the old model, which was 10 years ago, you really got a contract. You got some people on visas who maybe went and did almost a year, 2 years in the US. Some of them went on to get green cards and become US citizens. Some of them came back to India. So that model of quickly hiring maybe 20 people for a task from India, sending them off to the US, may become unviable because the customer may not be willing to pay at an average of $130,000 per year for the people there. So I think that is why you have to rethink the model, think how much of it can be delivered either through local resourcing, how much of it, like digital, for instance. A lot of the work in e-commerce can be done by having teams in India who are actually building products or building platforms, and then there is a good team in the US implementing that. So the need for cross-border movements will have to be minimized. But it was all speculative. I'm saying that I don't think such a move may actually become law. But if it does become, then yes, there will be a rethink required for many companies, especially those who have used the old model and are continuing to use the old model.
Question, Mr. Natarajan, is what happens in the interim period while the rethink takes center stage and becomes functional? What's the impact on margins that such a move could cause? Because companies won't simply double the H-1B wages, right? They'll probably have to do a lot more local hiring, if at all, and that will naturally come at a price.
No, there is no doubt at all. I have kept saying for the last 2 years, margins will continue to be under pressure in the IT industry for many, many reasons, and this is just one of those. The whole move towards digital is clearly something that you're seeing as, people are not ready for it, are being left out in the cold. So yes, it is a time of high pressure for the IT industry. But I think visionary CEOs will have changed the model, will have already taken steps, and will continue to be under pressure to make it happen. So clearly, these are not easy times for the IT industry.
Mr. Natarajan, if I may come in with a question there, I don't know if you still have the sense or not, but does it apply only on fresh visas, or does this also apply on people who are already with an H-1B visa in the US?
I have no sense on that, but if your question is that if somebody's on an H-1 and getting $75,000 salary, will you be forced to change the salary upwards? I don't know. But I'm presuming that in a level playing field, one would do that. You would hardly send a fresh person on $130,000 salary and keep the existing person on less. So overall, there'll be a cost pressure on the entire wage bill and not just on new entry.
And how does that really change the dynamic for an organization that does a lot of work through H-1B visa? I understand the fact that there will be more on-site hiring, and I think the question that Neeraj, my colleague, alluded to. But how does this change things? A, you're going to first revise salaries for people who are on-site with H-1B visa, and then, of course, revise salaries upwards for all new people who go on that visa. And add to that the cost of reskilling America as well.
I know there are a lot of smart CEOs out there, so don't worry. I'm sure they'll find a solution. But the point I'm making is, yes, you'll have to rethink the model. You'll also have to look at, and I've kept saying this in the past. I mean, one has to look at digital platforms, digital product development. That should be. I mean, it's no longer enough to make it 20% or 25% or even 30% of your revenues. Over the next 2 years, almost 75% of your revenues, if you're a very profitable company, will have to come through product and platform development and less through wage arbitrage, which used to be the model of the past. So the vestiges of that will have to be moved out, and you have to do a much more value-added model. So I think that's what all new companies are looking at, and even the existing companies are transforming into.
Rajan, while I'm not asking you to preempt too much, but is this 200, 250 bips margin impact at the very start itself?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, this is too early to comment because one has to really see if anything gets enacted, what is the fine print, and then of course for each company, because there are companies which are still maybe 60% H1 dependent. There are, in fact, I was talking to a company 2 days ago who said that, look, it doesn't make a difference to us at all. The only difference it makes to us is that if there are some few people who are working on the H1 thing, we'll transfer that to local hiring and maybe have less than a 0.1% impact. So it depends very company to company. But having said that, as I said, the companies of the future, as I mentioned earlier, will have a different model and will not be visa dependent. And that is, the writing is on the wall that you have to make that happen.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.